The wind came off Lake Superior like a grieving hymn, and the snow hit Duluth in sheets so thick the streetlights looked like drowned stars. At the far end of an abandoned rail station, Evelyn Parker, 80 years old and shaking to the bone, held her 15-year-old granddaughter Lily so tight it was like trying to keep a heartbeat from slipping away. Lily's shoes were soaked through, her lips cracked, her pride the only thing still standing straight. Cars slid past without slowing. Nobody looked twice, until a man stepped out of the whiteout and stopped cold. Ryan Cole, 40, a former special ops soldier with a jaw carved hard by years he didn't talk about, stared at them like he'd just found a memory he tried to bury. Beside him, Max, a 5-year-old German shepherd, stood alert, silent, steady, watching the darkness like it could bite. Evelyn swallowed the last of her dignity. "Please," she whispered, voice breaking. "Take Lily. Just her. She still has a life." Ryan's eyes sharpened, not with cruelty, with a vow. "Ma'am," he said, calm as the storm raged, "I'm not taking your granddaughter." Evelyn's heart sank, until he stepped closer and finished, low and unshakable. "I'm taking both of you." White night on the edge of Duluth. The wind came off Lake Superior like an old god clearing its throat, and snow filled the air until the world looked erased. Streetlights floating in whiteness, the harbor groaning somewhere beyond sight. At the far end of an abandoned rail station, where the platform boards were warped and the metal benches wore coats of ice, Evelyn Parker stood with her back to the wind. She was 80, small-boned and slightly stooped, the kind of woman who had once been tall in spirit, even if time had shortened her spine. Her hair, what the knit cap didn't hide, was thin and silver, tucked into a tight bun out of habit more than vanity. Her skin was pale, with a faint map of age spots, and her hands were red and chapped, the fingers knuckled like old tree roots that refused to let go of the earth. Evelyn's face carried a gentleness that had been practiced through decades, smiling at neighbors, forgiving little cruelties, surviving big ones. Tonight, that gentleness was cracking, not into anger, but into something worse. Fear that had no place to go. Pressed close to her was Lily Parker, her granddaughter, 15, all sharp edges and stubborn pride trying to pass for courage. Lily was tall for her age, though hunger had thinned her into a reed. A few strands of dark brown hair escaped her hood and stuck to her cheek in wet curls. Her skin was light, flushed raw by windburn, and her eyes were the color of storm clouds, gray-blue, alert, refusing to look down for long. Lily didn't cry. She didn't even sniffle, though her nose was red and her lips were cracked. She kept her jaw clenched, a teenage vow sealed behind her teeth. If I fall apart, Grandma will fall with me. Evelyn knew that look. She had worn it herself as a girl, back when pride was a coat you could pretend was warm. 2 days earlier, the landlord had spoken the word out, like it was a simple direction. Evelyn had tried to explain. Social security checks didn't stretch like they used to. Medical bills didn't care how polite you were, and winter never waited its turn. The man had not raised his voice. That was the cruelty. Calm and tidy, as if he were sweeping up dust. Now they stood under a steel awning that offered more noise than shelter, and their belongings were reduced to a single battered suitcase and a grocery bag tied in knots. Cars passed on the road beyond the station. Headlights slid by like indifferent comets. No one stopped. No one rolled down a window. No one even honked in warning, as if the storm had made the world forget that human beings could be seen. Evelyn drew Lily closer, her scarf flapping like a flag of surrender. Baby, she whispered, voice roughened by cold and shame. Keep moving your toes. Don't let them go numb. Lily gave a tight nod. I'm fine. It was a lie with good intentions. The kind teenagers tell because they think bravery is the same thing as silence. Evelyn glanced at Lily's sneakers. Canvas, soaked through, the laces stiff with ice. 15, she thought. 15 is supposed to be homework and silly songs and thinking the world is too small for you. Not this. She tasted panic like pennies on her tongue. Then, out of the white, a figure appeared. At first, it was only a dark shape moving against the snowstorm. Steady, purposeful. As he came closer, the station's weak light caught his face, and Evelyn saw a man who looked carved rather than born. Ryan Cole was 40, white American, with shoulders squared by a life of lifting burdens no one else wanted. His face had the angular planes of someone who'd spent too many nights awake. High cheekbones, a strong jaw, and a mouth set into a line that didn't waste words. A trim, dark blonde beard shadowed his chin, and snow gathered along it like salt. His eyes were pale, hard to read, steel gray with a tired kind of focus, the gaze of a man who had learned to scan corners before he learned to relax. He wore a heavy coat that had seen better years, boots built for punishment, and gloves that looked like they'd been repaired more than once. He didn't swagger like the heroes in old movies. He moved with a quiet economy, as if every step had a purpose and every sound had a cost. Something had happened to Ryan, something that had left him with that watchful stillness. The kind of stillness that comes from having once lived in places where mistakes had names and consequences. Beside him walked a dog. Not a small dog meant for laps and laughs, but a German shepherd, 5 years old, traditional in build. Muscular, athletic, with a thick double coat that was black along the saddle and warm tan on the legs and chest. His ears stood upright, triangular flags of attention, and his tail hung low, not fearful, controlled. The dog's name was Max, and he wore a plain collar that had been scratched by life. His eyes were dark and intelligent, and the way he moved, head slightly lowered, nose testing the air, made him look like a creature built to read danger the way others read road signs. Max stopped first. He looked at Evelyn, then Lily, then back to Ryan as if to say, "This is the moment. Decide what kind of man you are." Ryan halted under the awning. Snow dusted his shoulders. His gaze fell to Lily's shoes, then to Evelyn's shaking hands, then to the suitcase that looked too heavy for a woman her age. His expression tightened, something like anger, but not at them. At the world. At the storm. At whatever memory had just opened its jaws in his chest. Evelyn swallowed. Asking strangers for help was a humiliation she'd endured before, but never with Lily standing beside her. Lily's presence made the shame feel sharper, like a blade held too close. Lily lifted her chin, defensive. "We're not," she started, then stopped. Pride faltered when her stomach growled loud enough to be heard over the wind. Max's ears flicked, and for a second the dog looked almost amused, like he'd heard that exact sound from 100 tough guys who insisted they weren't hungry after a long day. Ryan's mouth twitched once, not quite a smile. It vanished quickly, as if he didn't trust joy. Evelyn's throat burned. She had been holding the line all night, patching courage together like a quilt. Now it tore. "Sir," she said, voice cracking with cold and desperation. "Please, Her eyes went to Lily, then away. Saying it felt like swallowing glass, but Evelyn loved Lily more than she loved her own pride. Please take my granddaughter, Evelyn whispered. Just her. She's 15. She has a whole life ahead. Lily spun toward her. Grandma, no! Evelyn squeezed Lily's fingers hard, the way mothers and grandmothers have done for centuries when words aren't enough. In her mind, she saw Lily's future like a lantern flickering in wind. If I go out, let the lantern stay lit. Ryan stared at Evelyn as if she'd struck him. For a moment, the storm seemed to pause, listening. Ryan's eyes softened, but only slightly. The softness of a man who knew tenderness could get you killed and still chose it anyway. He glanced at Max. The dog held his gaze steadily, the silent oath between them as old as wolves and soldiers. We guard the weak. We bring our pack home. Evelyn waited, trembling. Lily's heart hammered. She hated the world for putting her grandmother in this position. She hated herself for being hungry. She hated the snow for being so beautiful while it tried to kill them. Ryan stepped forward, boots crunching on ice. And the chapter ended there, on the edge of a decision, with the wind howling like a myth and the station holding its breath. Nobody gets left behind. Ryan's boots stopped close enough that Evelyn could smell the faint bite of cold leather and wood smoke on him, as if he carried a small, stubborn fire inside his coat. The wind kept screaming through the rail station, rattling the metal sign above them like a warning bell. Snow crawled sideways across the platform, trying to climb their ankles, their hems, their bones. Ryan lowered himself slowly, not with the clumsy kindness of a man pretending to be gentle, but with the controlled ease of someone trained to move quietly in dangerous places. He knelt until he was level with Lily's eyes. Up close, Lily saw the details she'd missed at a distance. A thin scar cutting through Ryan's right eyebrow, the faint shadow of fatigue beneath his eyes, and the way his jaw flexed as if he was biting back a memory. His beard was neatly trimmed, but his face still looked weathered, wind-chapped, sleepless, honest. Max shifted with him, stepping forward half a pace. The German shepherd's thick black and tan coat was crusted with frost along the spine, and his breath came out in steady clouds. His ears stayed upright, but his tail moved once, slow, controlled, like a quiet signal. I see you. I'm here. Don't do anything foolish. Lily's first instinct was to protect her grandmother. Her second instinct, older than pride, was to protect herself. She had learned, quickly and painfully, that strangers could be dangerous in ways a storm could not. You don't have to, Lily began, but her voice cracked. Cold had a way of stealing dignity right out of the throat. Ryan looked at her like he'd heard those words before, like he'd said them once too. I'm not taking you away from her, Ryan said, voice low and steady. He spoke in simple sentences, the way people do when they've had training, or trauma, or both. That's not help. That's something else. Evelyn's breath hitched. She had been bracing for rejection, bracing for cruelty disguised as politeness. When Ryan didn't give it, her body didn't know what to do with relief. It trembled like a door that's finally been unlatched. But, Evelyn tried again, because desperation is stubborn. Sir, she's 15. She can work. She can live. I can't. She stopped, ashamed of the sentence her mind had almost finished. I can't keep up. Ryan's gaze softened, but not into pity. It was something sturdier than pity, something built. I'm taking both of you, he said. The words landed like a blanket thrown over shoulders that had been freezing for days. Evelyn stared. Lily stared harder. Lily's mind raced through every warning she'd ever been given. Don't get in cars with strangers. Don't trust men who show up in the dark. Don't believe the world is kinder than it is. And yet, Ryan wasn't offering candy or charm. He wasn't trying to be liked. He was acting like a man who had already decided what was right and didn't need permission to do it. Lily swallowed. "Why?" she demanded, sharper than she meant. Sharpness was safer than tears. Ryan's eyes flicked briefly toward the empty tracks and the blown-out white beyond the station. For the first time, his voice wasn't only controlled, it was haunted. "Because I know what it looks like," he said, "when winter decides you don't matter." That sentence held something heavy behind it. Not a story he wanted to tell. Not yet. Evelyn's hands tightened around Lily's fingers. Her skin felt like paper. Lily felt it and hated the storm all over again. Max took a step closer to Evelyn, nose lifting to sniff her glove, then Lily's sleeve. His attention wasn't frantic. It was careful. He made a soft sound in his throat, not a growl, not a bark, more like a question. Ryan answered the dog without looking down. "Easy, Max." The command was gentle, and Max obeyed instantly. That told Lily more than words could. This dog was trained, yes, but also loved. Not a weapon, a partner. Ryan stood, scanning the road again. A car's headlights swung by in the distance. No slowing, no stopping. He turned back to Evelyn. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" Evelyn's lips parted, but only a small, broken sound came out. She shook her head once. Ryan's jaw tightened again. "All right." He pulled a small insulated bottle from his coat pocket, the kind hikers carry, unscrewed it, held it out. "Warm tea," he said. "Take a sip." Evelyn hesitated, the way older women do when they've spent a lifetime being told not to inconvenience anyone. Lily hesitated, the way teenagers do when they're trying to survive without looking afraid. Ryan didn't push. He simply kept holding it there, arms steady, eyes patient. Evelyn took it with shaking hands and drank. Her eyelids fluttered. The warmth looked like it hurt as it returned to her body. "Now you," Ryan said to Lily. Lily took the bottle, drank, and felt heat spread through her chest like a small miracle. She hated how close she was to crying. Ryan reached for his own coat zipper, then stopped. He looked at Lily's soaked hoodie, the thin fabric clinging to her arms. He glanced at Evelyn's scarf, the way it wasn't enough. He made a decision. He shrugged off his heavy coat in one smooth motion and draped it around Evelyn's shoulders first. The coat swallowed her, too big, too warm. Evelyn gasped. "No," she protested. "You'll freeze." Ryan's expression didn't change. "I won't." Lily opened her mouth to argue, but Max stepped in close to Ryan's leg, pressing his body against Ryan's knee as if offering heat. As if he'd done this before. Ryan pulled a second layer, an old wool overshirt, from his pack and held it out to Lily. It smelled faintly of cedar and laundry soap. "Put it on," he said. "Please." The word "please" surprised Lily. It wasn't weakness, it was respect. Lily took it and slipped it over her hoodie. The fabric was thick, and the warmth made her fingers tingle. Ryan slung Evelyn's suitcase onto his shoulder with one hand like it weighed nothing. His other hand stayed free, not grabbing, not forcing, just available. "We're walking," he said. "My truck's parked a few blocks away. Safer than driving up here in this ice." Evelyn's eyes widened. In this storm? Ryan nodded. I've walked worse. There it was again. The hint of a past that had shaped him into someone who could stand in blizzards and make choices without flinching. Max moved first, trotting ahead with his nose down, checking the snow-packed ground, ears pivoting like radar. He looked back once, confirming the group was following. Evelyn took a step, then another. Her knees wobbled. Ryan noticed immediately. He didn't scold, didn't rush. He simply shifted closer, offering his arm. If you slip, he said, I catch you. That's how this works. Lily watched him, suspicion battling something tender and unfamiliar. Hope. They left the shelter of the rail station and stepped into the open street, where the wind hit them full force, slapping snow against their faces. Behind them, the abandoned platform receded into white, like a bad dream being swallowed. Ahead, Ryan walked with the certainty of a man who refused to let the storm write the ending. And Lily, 15 and shaking, followed, still afraid, still wary, but no longer alone. The pack in the white. The street beyond the station felt wider, lonelier, and more alive with threat, as if the storm preferred open ground where it could push people around like paper. Ryan walked in front, angled slightly into the wind, his shoulders set with the quiet defiance of a man who had been trained to keep moving even when every instinct screamed to stop. Evelyn followed close, swallowed in his coat, each step careful and small. Lily stayed on Evelyn's other side, jaw clenched, forcing her legs to obey. Max took point, head low, nose working, ears turning like antennae, reading the snow for messages humans couldn't see. They moved through Duluth's sleeping industrial edge, where warehouses loomed as dark blocks and the harbor cranes were only ghosts behind the white veil. Snow swallowed the sound of the city, but it couldn't swallow the little noises that betrayed weakness. The scrape of Lily's sneakers, Evelyn's thin, rasping breath, the soft click of Max's tags when he shifted direction. Lily hated those sounds. They felt like a flare fired into the night. Ryan slowed at a corner where a streetlight flickered. The light made the falling snow look like 1,000 tiny blades. He lifted a hand, palm down, and they all stopped. Not because he was dramatic, but because he listened the way some people pray. Fully. Fiercely. Max froze first. The dog's body tightened, fur rising along the ridge of his back under the frost. A low sound gathered in his throat. Not quite a growl. More like a warning he didn't want to give unless he had to. Lily's stomach knotted. She followed Max's gaze into the tree line beyond a sagging chain-link fence where the storm had piled drifts like graves. At first she saw nothing. Then the storm shifted, and the darkness blinked. Eyes. Not one pair, several. Pale, reflecting streetlight like coins. Evelyn's hand clamped around Lily's wrist with surprising strength. No, Evelyn whispered, like saying it could make it untrue. Ryan didn't curse. He didn't shout. He simply exhaled once, slow, controlled, and took one step sideways so his body covered both of them from whatever was watching. His movements changed, smaller, more precise, like a switch had been flipped inside him. Lily could feel it. The air around Ryan became organized, purposeful. He was no longer a man walking in a storm. He was a man setting a perimeter. "Behind me," he said, voice low enough that the wind almost stole it. "Lily, stay on your grandma's left. Evelyn, keep your feet under you. No sudden running." He didn't call them ma'am or miss now. He used names. That mattered. Names made them people, not problems. Max stepped forward, placing himself a half pace in front of Ryan's knee, angled toward the fence. The German Shepherd's stance was balanced, weight on his front paws, ready to spring, but not reckless. In Max's eyes there was no panic, only focus, like a soldier waiting for the next command. Ryan reached into his pocket and pulled out his flashlight. He didn't shine it wildly. He swept it slow and steady across the fence line, making the eyes blink and shift. The beam caught the shape of a wolf, lean, gray-brown, ribs faintly visible beneath its coat. Another moved behind it, then another, bodies sliding between trees like shadows with teeth. Hunger did that to animals. It made them bold enough to come close to humans, especially the kind of humans who looked too tired to fight back. Lily's throat tightened. She was 15, old enough to understand that stories about wolves didn't end well when you were cold and slow. Ryan crouched slightly and unzipped a side pouch on his pack. He pulled out a small bag, jerky probably, and held it in his gloved hand. Lily thought he might feed them, thought he might beg the wild the way Evelyn had begged the world. But Ryan's eyes stayed hard and clear. He tossed the bag far to the right, beyond a drift and toward a patch of deeper shadows. It landed with a soft thud. The wolves' heads snapped toward the sound. One stepped away from the fence, then two, drawn by the promise of food. Ryan didn't wait for all of them to follow. He only needed a crack in their attention. "Now," he murmured, and guided them backward toward a nearby yard where the snow had banked high against a wooden fence. "Slow. Keep breathing." They moved like a small, fragile unit. Lily kept her shoulder pressed close to Evelyn's, feeling the older woman tremble through the heavy coat. Evelyn's breath came in shallow pulls. Lily wanted to tell her to be quiet, but the words felt cruel. Evelyn's body was doing its best. Max stayed between them and the wolves, walking backward without taking his eyes off the tree line, a living shield in black and tan. The wolves paced along the fence, frustrated. One darted left, testing. Max answered with a sharp bark that cracked through the snow like a whip. The wolf hesitated. Not because Max was bigger, wolves weren't easily impressed, but because Max was certain, and certainty can be louder than size. They reached the yard. Ryan's gloved hand found the top rail of the fence. "Over," he said, indicating a lower section where the snow had piled high enough to make a ramp. "Lily first." Lily swallowed. "What about first?" Ryan repeated, not unkindly. "You're steady. Go." Lily climbed, fingers numb, boots slipping. The snow was packed hard, slick on top. She swung the leg over and dropped into the yard, landing with a jolt that shot pain up her shin. She turned immediately to help Evelyn, heart pounding. Evelyn tried to climb, but her knees shook violently, and she faltered halfway. A wolf's shape surged along the fence line, closer now, its head low. Max lunged forward and barked again, louder, teeth flashing. The wolf stopped short, wary of the dog's willingness to fight. Ryan grabbed the strap of his pack and looped it around Evelyn's waist in one smooth motion, anchoring her like a climber. "Hold the fence," he told her. Then he braced himself, feet wide, and pulled with controlled force, lifting Evelyn over the top rail, inch by inch. Evelyn's breath turned into a sob, half fear, half humiliation. But Ryan didn't flinch. He simply got the job done. Evelyn dropped into the yard, nearly collapsing. Lily caught her, arms around the older woman's shoulders, feeling how light she'd become. Too light. Like winter had been eating her from the inside. They weren't safe yet. As they moved deeper into the yard, Lily's foot hit a patch of ice hidden under fresh powder. Her leg shot out. She fell hard, the impact knocking the air from her lungs in a sharp, humiliating gasp. Evelyn cried out, reaching for her. Lily's palms burned as she tried to push herself up. Ryan was there instantly, too fast for a man carrying exhaustion. His hand locked around Lily's forearm, pulling her upright with a grip that didn't bruise, but didn't allow refusal. For a second, Lily's face was inches from his coat, and she smelled the same thing again. Wood smoke, leather, and something like iron. "Feet under you," he said, steady, like he'd said it 1,000 times to someone else. "You're okay." Lily wanted to snap at him. She wanted to say she didn't need help. But her knees were shaking, and the words died in her throat. She nodded once, furious at the relief that flooded her. Behind the fence, the wolves prowled, moving parallel to them, frustrated and hungry. Ryan kept them moving toward the back door of the house the yard belonged to, hoping for a porch light, a sign of life. A porch light flicked on. The door cracked open. A woman appeared, framed by warmth, holding a phone in one hand like a weapon. She was in her late 30s or early 40s, with a sturdy, practical build, the kind that came from real work and real winters. Her hair was a messy dark blonde bun, and her face was pale but alert, eyes sharp with suspicion. She wore flannel pajamas under a long parka, and her cheeks were flushed from heat and adrenaline. "Who the hell?" she started. Then her gaze landed on Evelyn's shaking body and Lily's scraped palms, and something in her expression shifted. Ryan lifted both hands, empty, calm. "Ma'am," he said, voice respectful but urgent. "We need shelter. Wolves on the fence line." The woman's eyes widened as a shadow moved beyond the yard. She didn't hesitate long. "Inside," she snapped, already opening the door wider. "Now!" Ryan guided Evelyn forward. Max backed in last, still watching the darkness until the door shut with a solid, blessed thud. Warm air hit Lily's face like a wave. For a second, she couldn't breathe, not because of the cold anymore, but because safety felt unreal. The room smelled like coffee and detergent and ordinary life. Evelyn sagged against the wall, shaking so hard her teeth clicked. The woman set her phone down, hands trembling slightly now that the immediate decision was made. Up close, she had fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the kind earned from squinting into sun on snow and worrying about people she loved. "I'm Sarah," she said quickly, voice still hard but not cruel. "Sarah Whitaker. You're going to tell me what's going on, but first," she pointed toward the kitchen. "Blankets, water. Sit her down." Ryan nodded once, as if receiving orders. Lily watched him move through the warm room like he still carried the storm inside. Max shook snow from his coat in one powerful ripple, then pressed his body against Lily's leg, grounding her. Outside, something scraped along the fence. Inside, the first real chance to survive began. Firelight and the names the wind remembers. Sarah Whitaker's living room was small but stubbornly warm. The kind of room that had fought 100 Minnesota winters and refused to surrender. A cast-iron stove glowed in the corner, breathing orange light into the walls. The air smelled of pine cleaner, old books, and something faintly sweet. Cinnamon from a pot that had once simmered longer than it should have. Outside, the storm kept clawing at the siding, but inside, the heat pressed against Lily's face like a hand saying, "You made it." Sarah stood near the doorway as if she were guarding her own heart, not just her house. In the light, she looked tougher than she had outside. Late 30s, practical build, shoulders broad from lifting groceries through snowdrifts and carrying worry without complaint. Her hair was dark blonde, messy in a bun that kept slipping loose. Her skin was pale from winter, with a wind-reddened nose and freckles scattered like tiny sparks across her cheeks. Her eyes were a clear green, sharp and watchful. The eyes of a woman who had learned that kindness without caution could get you hurt. She pointed to the couch with an efficient jerk of her chin. "Sit her down," she said, meaning Evelyn, but her gaze flicked to Lily, too. "Both of you, you're shaking like you've been out there all night." Evelyn sank onto the couch as if gravity had finally won. Ryan's coat draped over her shoulders like borrowed salvation. Her thin hands trembled in her lap, and for a moment she looked smaller than her 80 years could explain, like a candle burned down to a fragile stub. Lily stayed standing at first, still keyed up, still hearing wolves in every creak. Her pride wanted her to remain upright, but her body betrayed her. Her knees threatened to fold, and her fingers tingled with the painful return of warmth. Ryan moved with quiet purpose, the way he had outside when danger had eyes. He didn't pace like a nervous man. He didn't fidget. He simply assessed. The room, the exits, the people. Lily watched him do it and realized he wasn't being rude. He was being careful. Careful had probably kept him alive more than once. Max shook the snow from his coat in a single powerful ripple, spraying tiny crystals that glittered briefly in the firelight before melting into the rug. The German shepherd's ears stayed upright, but his posture softened now that walls separated them from the night. He padded over to Lily, pressed his shoulder against her shin, and sat. Solid, warm, wordless. Lily's breath caught. She had known dogs before, but not like this. A dog that felt like an oath. Sarah disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a thick quilt and 2 mugs. One mug was plain, the other had a chipped rim and a faded print of a lighthouse. Duluth humor, stubborn and nautical. She handed the quilt to Lily first, as if to test whether Lily would accept help. Lily hesitated, then took it and wrapped it around her shoulders. The quilt smelled like clean laundry and cedar. "Drink," Sarah said, placing the plain mug into Evelyn's hands. Steam rose from it. "Small sips, don't gulp, you'll get sick." Evelyn obeyed like someone too tired to argue. Her eyes fluttered with relief, then shame. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't want to." Sarah cut her off with a sharp little shake of her head. "Don't apologize for being cold," she said. But her voice softened just a fraction. "Winter's got enough pride for everyone." Lily stared at the fire. The orange light made the room feel unreal, like stepping into a storybook after living in a newspaper headline. Her stomach growled, loud enough to embarrass her. She clamped her mouth shut, cheeks burning. Sarah heard it anyway and snorted, not unkindly. "Good, that means you're still alive." She opened a cupboard and pulled out a tin of crackers and a jar of peanut butter. "Not fancy, but it'll keep you upright." Lily took a cracker. Her fingers still felt clumsy, as if they belonged to someone else. She spread peanut butter with shaking hands and ate. The taste hit her tongue and her eyes stung. She hated that food could make her want to cry. Ryan stood near the window, watching the yard as if the storm might grow hands and try the doorknob. Snow blew sideways in thick sheets. Beyond the glass, something moved along the fence line. Dark shapes that melted in and out of the white. Wolves didn't like houses, but hunger made them bold, and bold things didn't leave quickly. Sarah noticed Ryan's stance. "You military?" she asked, not with admiration, but with the wary tone of someone who had seen military men break in different ways. Ryan's jaw flexed. He didn't look at her immediately. When he did, his eyes were steady, but there was a weight behind them. "Used to be," he said. Sarah's gaze traveled to the scar in his eyebrow, the controlled way he held his shoulders, the calm that looked like it had been welded into him. "Combat?" Ryan's answer came after a breath. "Yeah." That was all. Lily sensed the locked door behind that word. Evelyn, however, watched him with an older kind of understanding. She knew what it meant to carry a lifetime of things you didn't say out loud. Sarah took a phone from the counter. Her hands were steady now, practical again. "I'm calling animal control," she said. "And the police, because wolves close to homes is a public safety issue." Ryan shook his head once. "They won't get here fast. Roads are bad." "Still calling," Sarah replied. "Hope is free." She made the calls, voice firm, giving her address, describing the situation with crisp details. Lily listened and felt something unfamiliar, being handled by someone competent. Not pitied, not pushed away, just protected in a way that didn't require begging. When Sarah hung up, she looked at Evelyn more carefully. "You got frostbite?" Evelyn lifted her hands slightly. Her fingertips were pale, waxy. "I can feel them," she said, as if offering proof she wasn't broken. Ryan stepped closer and crouched near Evelyn's feet. He spoke gently, but his tone was that of someone who'd been trained to notice small details before they turned fatal. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her boots. Evelyn nodded. Lily watched Ryan unlace the boots, peel them back carefully, and examine Evelyn's toes through her socks. He didn't touch the skin too long. He didn't rush. He didn't look away either. Lily realized his gentleness wasn't sentimental. It was disciplined. The kind of compassion that had learned to work under pressure. Sarah returned with a basin of warm, not hot, water and clean towels. "No direct heat," she said, as if reciting a rule she'd learned the hard way. "I grew up on a farm up north. I've seen people lose fingers by being impatient." Evelyn's eyes widened. "Bless you," she murmured. Sarah's mouth twitched. "Don't bless me yet. I'm still deciding if I like you." The joke landed just enough to loosen the tightness in the room. Even Evelyn gave a thin, startled laugh. Lily glanced at Ryan. He was watching the fire now, and in that flickering light, his face looked older than 40. The storm outside whistled through cracks in the siding, and Lily noticed Ryan's fingers curl slightly, as if the sound had tugged a string inside him. Evelyn noticed too. She spoke softly, like one grandmother to another, even though Ryan was a man. "Young man," she said, voice gentle, "you look like you've been hearing that wind a long time." Ryan's eyes lifted to hers. For a second, the careful mask thinned. Lily saw something underneath. Grief shaped into steel. "I've heard it call names," Ryan said quietly. "Names I couldn't bring back." The words dropped into the room like a stone into water. Sarah stopped moving. Lily's breath caught. Evelyn's expression softened into compassion so deep it almost looked like sorrow. Ryan swallowed, as if he regretted speaking, but he didn't take it back. He only added, barely above a whisper, "Tonight, I'm not letting it take any more." Outside, a wolf howled, a long, searching sound that slid under the door like smoke. Max stood, ears forward, then looked back at Lily and sat again, choosing calm. Lily clutched the quilt tighter, feeling the boundary between danger and safety drawn by walls, firelight, and the strange mercy of a man who refused to look away. The knock at the door, and the warmth that stayed. Morning arrived quietly, the kind of quiet that felt suspicious after a night of wolves and wind. Snow still fell, but softer now, as if the storm had finally grown tired of being cruel. Through Sarah Whitaker's kitchen window, the world looked washed in milk. Fences blurred, trees bowed, the street buried under drifts that made every driveway look like a small mountain. Inside, the cast-iron stove continued to glow, patient as a heartbeat. Evelyn sat at the table with both hands wrapped around a mug, trying to convince her fingers they belonged to her again. In the warm light, her face looked less ghostly, but the lines of exhaustion remained, deep around her mouth, etched into her brow. Lily sat across from her, the quilt still around her shoulders. At 15, she wanted to appear unbothered, but every so often her gaze darted to the window, tracking shadows that weren't there anymore. Fear lingered the way cold did, slow to leave, even when you were safe. Ryan stood near the entryway, pulling on his boots. His hair was still damp from melted snow, and his beard caught the light in a way that made his jaw look sharper, more carved. His calm was not the calm of someone without fear. It was the calm of someone who had learned what fear was good for, and what it wasn't. Max watched him from the rug, head tilted, ears forward, ready to follow. "I'm going into town," Ryan said, voice low so it didn't feel like an announcement, more like a plan. "Pharmacy, food, a few things you'll need." He glanced at Evelyn's hands. "And gloves that actually work." Evelyn tried to protest out of habit. "You've already—" Ryan lifted a hand, not rude, just final. "Let me." Then, softer, he added, "It's what I do when I can." Sarah leaned against the counter, arms crossed over her parka, even indoors, as if she refused to fully relax. "Roads are bad," she warned. Her green eyes narrowed in the practical way of a woman who'd learned to measure risk by the inch. "If you slide into a ditch, I'm not digging you out." Ryan's mouth twitched. "Not planning on it." Lily watched him, throat tight. Part of her wanted to ask to come, teenage stubbornness mixed with the need to keep control of something. But she stayed silent, because she could feel her grandmother's fragile relief, and she didn't want to shatter it with a fight. Max rose as Ryan reached for the door, then paused when Ryan gave a small gesture, 2 fingers down. "Stay." The dog obeyed, but his eyes followed Ryan with devotion. A soldier watching his commander walk into weather. Ryan left with the storm brushing his shoulders like a cloak, and the door shut behind him with a solid click that sounded like a promise. The hours crawled. Sarah turned on a radio low, the local station crackling with winter advisories and road closures. Evelyn dozed in the chair, chin tucked, still wearing Ryan's coat like a borrowed miracle. Lily sat on the floor near Max, absently combing her fingers through the dog's thick fur. Max accepted it with a sigh that felt almost human. His coat was clean now, soft under Lily's hand, and the steady warmth of his body anchored her to the present. "You've got a good dog," Lily murmured, half to herself. Sarah glanced down. "He acts like he belongs to Ryan's heartbeat." Lily swallowed. "Does Ryan always help people?" Sarah's expression tightened. "Some folks help because they're kind. Some help because they're trying to outrun something." She looked away, as if she didn't want to say more than that. Lily understood anyway. Ryan's eyes had looked like a winter sky, calm but hiding storms. When Ryan finally returned, it was late afternoon. His truck rumbled into the driveway like a tired animal. He came in carrying bags that looked heavy enough to bend the average man, but his grip stayed steady. Snow clung to his shoulders. His face was harder than it had been when he left. Sarah noticed first. "What happened?" Ryan set the bags down and exhaled through his nose. "Someone in town asked about them," he said, nodding toward Evelyn and Lily. "Not the helpful kind." Evelyn's eyes snapped open. Fear erased sleep in an instant. "Asked? How?" Ryan's gaze went distant for a heartbeat, as if replaying the encounter. "A guy outside the pharmacy. Friendly voice. Too friendly. Wanted to know if I'd seen an older woman and a teenage girl. Said he was checking in on neighbors." Ryan's jaw tightened. He wasn't. He was counting. Lily's stomach dropped. At 15, she had learned the difference between curiosity and hunting. Sarah cursed under her breath. "What kind?" "The kind that pressures people to sign papers," Ryan said. "The kind that knows an 80-year-old with no address is easier to corner. The kind that doesn't care if the teen gets dragged into it." His eyes lifted to Lily, and something gentler passed over his face. "They'll come looking." Evelyn's hands began to shake again. "I knew it," she whispered, shame twisting her mouth. "I knew we'd bring trouble." Ryan stepped closer, lowering himself slightly so he wasn't towering over her. "No," he said firmly. "Trouble was already out there. You didn't create it. You survived it." Sarah set her chin. "Then we prepare." Ryan pulled a small camera from one of the bags, a compact home security unit. Already started. He moved with brisk efficiency, mounting it near the front window, angling it toward the yard. He set up a second camera by the door. He tested the porch light until it flashed bright and harsh across the snow like daylight. Lily watched, heart pounding. It was terrifying, yes, but it was also strange comfort to see someone turn fear into action. Night fell early, as winter nights did. The house settled into creaks and soft stove ticks. Max paced once, then lay down near Lily and Evelyn, his body forming a barrier. Sarah brewed coffee that was too strong and pretended it was normal to be wide awake at midnight. Then, just after 10, headlights washed across the windows. A vehicle stopped outside. The sound of its engine idled like a growl. Lily's breath caught. She sat up so fast the quilt slid off her shoulders. Evelyn made a small sound, a broken prayer without words. Max rose in one fluid motion, ears forward, stance set. A knock hit the door. Not polite, not patient. Another knock followed, harder. Ryan didn't flinch. He didn't reach for violence. He reached for certainty. He tapped his phone, camera feed recording, and then pressed the button to flood the yard with light. The porch light snapped on, bright enough to turn snow into glitter and shadows into sharp truth. "Who is it?" Sarah called, voice steady, though her hand trembled slightly around her mug. A man's voice came through the door, muffled, rough. "Open up. We're looking for someone." Ryan stepped into view of the peephole, but he didn't open the door. His expression was carved from the same iron he'd spoken with before. "You're on camera," Ryan said, loud enough to carry. "Police have been called. Leave." A pause, then a scoff. "Police won't come in this weather." Ryan's tone didn't change. "They'll come, or animal control will find you first. Either way, you're leaving." Max let out one single bark, deep, commanding, like punctuation. The men outside muttered. The engine revved. Tires crunched on packed snow. The headlights swept away. Silence returned, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. Evelyn's shoulders sagged, and then she began to cry. Quietly, the way older women cry when they've held too much in. Lily moved to her without thinking and wrapped her arms around her grandmother. For the first time, Lily allowed herself to shake. Ryan turned from the door and looked at Lily and Evelyn, eyes softer now that the threat had retreated. "Lily," he said, and his voice carried a warmth that didn't ask permission. "You're 15. You deserve school, friends, normal days. Not running. Not hiding." Lily stared at him, throat tight, angry at the world and grateful to him in the same breath. She nodded once, because words were too small. Evelyn wiped her face with trembling fingers. "I don't know how to repay you," she whispered. Ryan glanced down at Max, who had returned to sit beside Lily, leaning his head against her knee as if claiming her as pack. Ryan's mouth curved into a faint smile that looked like it hadn't been used in a long time. "Don't repay me," Ryan said. "Just stay alive. Both of you." Sarah cleared her throat, eyes shiny despite herself. "You can stay here tonight," she said to Evelyn and Lily, then looked at Ryan. "And tomorrow, we figure out next steps." Ryan nodded. "Tomorrow," he agreed. In the firelight, with the cameras blinking and the storm easing outside, the house felt like something more than shelter. It felt like the beginning of a promise that might actually hold. Some storms don't come to destroy. Some come to reveal who we still are. That night in Duluth, when the wind tried to write a cruel ending, a quiet kind of miracle showed up instead. A man who refused to walk past pain. A loyal dog who guarded like an angel on 4 paws. And a door that opened at the exact moment hope was running out. People call it luck, but sometimes it feels like God's hand moving through ordinary lives, placing one brave heart in the path of another, reminding us that no one is meant to freeze alone. And maybe that's the message for all of us. Miracles aren't always bright lights in the sky. Sometimes they look like a warm coat, a bowl of soup, a phone call made in time, or the courage to knock on one more door. In our everyday lives, at the grocery store, in traffic, in the quiet moments when we think no one sees, God gives us chances to be someone else's answer. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment below. Have you ever experienced a moment that felt like God's timing? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story, because the next miracle might be the one you've been waiting to hear. May God bless you, protect your family, and keep a warm light in your home, especially on the coldest nights. Amen.